Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org. This is PBS Reno Arts. I am Dave Santina, and I have the distinct pleasure of spending some time in studio today with Dr. Donald Johanson. He's a paleoanthropologist, and the name may be familiar to you, and we'll get to why in a second here. You are the Virginia M. Ullman Chair in Human Origins in the School of Human Evolution and Social Change, and you're the founding director of the Institute of Human Origins at ASU, Arizona State University. Did I get all that correct?
100%.
Thank you. ASU, Arizona State, my alma mater.
I know.
So
you
thank
said
you,
earlier.
thank you for enhancing the reputation of the school where I once went before you got there. So yeah, I can now lean on you and say, because look at the school I went to. It's amazing, even though maybe it wasn't as amazing when I was there.
Well, it's certainly with the new president, Michael Crow, it's, I think, almost 10 years renamed or selected as the most innovative university in the country.
Yeah, and I got to say, I take a little pride in that. My tuition contributed a little bit to the foundation of that, I guess.
Well, I'm sure of that.
Now, for people listening who know your name but maybe don't remember why they know it, your exhibits are at museums all over the world representing the results of your work, but you're most well known as the man who discovered Lucy, and Lucy, the Australopithecus afarensis. Did I say that correctly?
You said that correct.
Thank you very much. I feel good about that. This is a special time for Lucy and for you. Your relationship goes back a while.
Exactly. This is the 50th anniversary year of my discovery. She was discovered in Ethiopia on November 24th, 1974. And it's amazing to look at this from 50 years out and to look back on her impact and to try to really understand during this celebratory year what influence and why was she so important at the time, and why is she so enduring in terms of her interest, not only in some scientist's laboratory, but also to the general public. And I think that she has become an icon for anyone who's interested in answering that very simple question that we all ask ourselves as kids. Mommy, where did I come from?
Right.
And her discovery broke the 3 million year time barrier. Before her discovery, anything older than 3 million years that was on the human family tree, you could fit into the palm of your hand. A piece of jaw, a bit of an elbow, a single tooth, and we didn't know what our most ancient ancestors looked like. So on that November day, when I was literally blown away as a scientist to look down and see the first fragments of what became 40% of a skeleton, was a moment when my childhood dream came true, to make a major discovery in the field. And I didn't know who she was, but I knew that she was older than 3 million years. And that opened up an incredibly new, exciting, and very broadened vista on our very distant ancestors. One of the lurking questions at that time was, did we stand up before we got big brains, or did we develop large brains before we left the forests where we had a common ancestor with the African apes? And she had a very small brain, less than about the average of a chimpanzee, and a projecting face, so she was very ape-like. But we had her hip, we had her knee, and we had her ankle. And orthopedic surgeons who see this skeleton always say, oh, those are the kind of knees we put in people who have a bad knee, or that's the same kind of hip we have. So the evidence is irrefutable that obviously we became upright long before we grew big brains. And she really stimulated an incredible interest in the field of paleoanthropology. Some people think that's the study of old anthropologists, but
I did want to ask you the difference between paleoanthropology and your run-of-the-mill anthropology.
well, anthropology, you can be a social cultural anthropologist and study various societies and cultures. You can be an archaeologist. You can be a linguist. And we fall under the rubric of biological anthropologists. And in my case, I'm trying to understand how we became human, what's happened over the last 7 million years or so, and what was the sequence of development. And we see these little diagrams in magazines all the time, particularly the New Yorker, where you've got an ape on the left side, and it gradually gets more and more upright and ends up as it's always a white European male, you know.
Of course, yeah, always, yeah.
Because white European males draw those things.
That's right, sure.
But we know now that Darwin was absolutely right when he said it's a tree with many branches. And what's interesting about that tree, and one of the great conclusions of the research I'm involved in, is that no matter where you grasp a branch on that family tree, the roots all lead back to Africa.
Right. Okay.
And that's a critical observation, because when I was a student way back when at the University of Chicago, there was so much emphasis on Europe as the finishing school for humanity that Neanderthals gradually evolved into modern humans because nothing ever happens in Africa was the observation.
That was the assumption made.
That was the assumption. And now we know that Africa is a place where we first separated from a common ancestor. We know that's a place where we first stood up. We know that's the place where we first had enlarged brains. We know that the oldest stone tools in the world were made in Africa. And we know that's where brains grew large. So Africa really is the homeland. We hear about some places that are called the cradle of humankind, like South Africa. But I like to call Africa the cradle of humankind because we don't know exactly where it happened. But Africa had the diversity of environments, the diversity of animals. It had lots of different kinds of apes. Unfortunately, we see them disappearing today.
Right.
But out of that pool of ape-like creatures came a number of creatures like chimps and gorillas and humans.
I saw you're all over YouTube. I'm sure you know this, but you're all over YouTube with some lectures and small pieces, large conversations, but a lot of content that is. I was scanning some of it to prepare to meet you, and one of them I was interested. You talked about, because of the longitude of Africa and just the sheer space and the landmass, that development occurred differently in different parts of that continent.
Yeah, that's certainly, if you look at Africa, it's a longitudinal continent rather than a latitudinal continent.
United States
Europe.
is a latitudinal country, right? It's longer than it is tall.
And we find these early human ancestors in two major areas in the Horn of Africa, where I found Lucy in Ethiopia, in an area which is called the Afar Triangle, after the Afar nomads who live there. But the first discovery, this year we're celebrating Lucy's 50th, but I just came back from a conference where I gave a paper at Indiana University on the 100th anniversary of the discovery of the first human ancestor skull found in Africa in 1924 by Raymond Dart. Dart was an anatomist, and he was building a school in Johannesburg, a medical school, and a skull fell into his hands from a place where they were mining for lime. And he recognized from the endocast, the shape of what we see inside the skull, and the hole at the bottom of the skull which is called the foramen magnum. It just means big hole, but that's where our spinal cord comes out.
Okay.
And in the family dog, it points backwards because it's quadrupedal.
Yeah,
it's got
right.
4 legs.
Right.
And if it stayed there, we would be walking around, looking up all the time. But as we took on upright walking, bipedalism, walking on 2 feet, that shifted dramatically and points straight down. So from that, he surmised that this was an ancestor, a human ancestor, and an ancient one. He didn't really know how old it was, but he knew it was fossilized. He knew it was undoubtedly of great antiquity, and it was the kind of ancestor that had been predicted by a number of people. Neanderthals and Homo erectus, Peking and Java man, they were found in those northern latitudes, but they weren't as ape-like as this skull that he found. So that really sparked the interest in Africa, but he made the big mistake of not consulting his professors in London, who were very upset about the fact that he just went ahead, described it, and published it, and said he's not really an anthropologist, he's a brain specialist. Well, he stuck to his guns and turned out to be absolutely right. But these fossils appear in eastern Africa, where I work, in Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and a few other places, and that's because of the Great Rift Valley, which is of incredible interest to people who study continental drift, for example. When Wegener said continents move around, people thought he was a little crazy.
Right.
But we know that this is true, that the eastern side of South America fits nicely into the western side of Africa.
Right.
And they've been migrating around. And there the geology has opened up these ancient sediments to us because of continental drift and so forth, plate tectonics. In South Africa, it's very different. These were limestone caves that opened to the surface of the ground, and and humans who were kind enough for us to fall into those and become fossilized have produced fossils from there. I suspect that these early things, Australopithecus, roamed widely over Africa. But because of the longitudinal nature of Africa, the ones in South Africa became more or less isolated from those in the Horn of Africa. And we never find the same species of early human in both places. So
interesting.
It's fascinating that, as Darwin predicted, natural selection works very differently in different environments. And that's a prime example of how coming from a similar ancestor, settling in different areas, you evolve into different sorts of species.
Yeah, fascinating. You made me think just now of a program that we produced here at PBS Reno, an episode of our series Artifacts that is just about to premiere, called Deep Time, Sea Dragons of Nevada. It's about an exhibit at the local Museum of Art here, which is a fantastic museum, and that looks at 250 million year old ichthyosaur fossils, which were discovered in the state of Nevada, which obviously is a desert, but 250 million years ago it was an ocean. So you think about the massive change, the physical change that our landscape goes through on over 250 million years. We're talking about species from 3-4 million years ago, humanoid, and you think about, what can change in that time period, and you're in the middle of learning that.
That's right. Yeah, and what we are also beginning to learn at the Institute of Human Origins, which is at ASU, is that there's more diversity during Lucy's time than we've ever seen before. Her species lived almost 1 million years, some like 900,000 years. You and I, as modern Homo sapiens, we've been around a couple of 100,000 years. A fifth of the time.
Which feels like a ton to us
Yeah.
when you think of it, but then looking at the scope of time, really Nothing.
Right.
We're a drop in the bucket.
We are, and we're. I call ourselves often Homo egocentricus. We think that nothing's going to happen to us.
Right.
But as we look around, and we look at the natural world crumbling all around us, and the overstressing that we are put on to the natural world. There was just an announcement today that some of the oceanic currents and things have changed significantly. And some of those, I didn't have a chance to read it this morning, but if the Gulf Stream were to change dramatically, Great Britain might go into an ice age. And they're not set up for it.
No, they're not prepared.
No. And so at any rate, we are trying to understand the world in which they lived and interacted and how they survived for so long. And for many years, I thought Lucy was the only species, Australopithecus afarensis. We now have over 500 specimens of that species from Kenya, from Tanzania, where they left footprints in a volcanic ash. Can you imagine that? This
Unreal.
is the most unbelievable development that the late Dr. Mary Leakey saw this site, or she saw it back in 1939. She came to visit me in Ethiopia and thought, well, maybe I ought to go back to that site. And there's a layer of volcanic ash, and it's like a plaster of Paris because it's got a lot of calcium carbonate in it. And there are raindrops in it and the dung beetle paths walking across it. And as they were excavating, they found jaws and teeth exactly like Lucy's. So it was the same species.
Wow.
And they found a footprint trail left by two of Lucy's relatives in Tanzania at 3.7 million years. And, of course, they weren't wearing shoes in those days.
Right.
So it's just like the footprint you look at when you look at the footprints you've left on the beach sand.
So the same feet, the same knees, the same hips.
Yep. So it is astonishing. But my colleague, who is now director, Johannes Haile Selassie, Ethiopian-born paleoanthropologist, is working in areas just north of where I found Lucy, where we have probably the largest collection of her species, because we only found her species. And normally you find some diversity. And he is finding that there are perhaps 2 or 3 other species living at the same time. And the enigma for us is, why is it at Hadar, where Lucy was found, have only a single species, and this other site, which is, 30 miles away or something like that, at the same time period, have Lucy's species and a couple of other species? Well, how different were the environments? And we're just beginning to think about that. So, and I've stressed this in many of my talks, because so many students say, "Oh, you guys have found everything." Well, we haven't. We've made discoveries that have opened up new, very tantalizing questions as to how did those several species live at roughly the same time? Were they eating different diets? They go to different grocery stores or what? Right. We don't know, but they were all natural elements in the animals of that time. So the diversity is interesting, and we had a long day symposium at the Institute, and one of the inescapable conclusions is that Lucy's species, which is upright walking and yet has a very small cranial capacity, probably is situated on the human family tree at a pivotal time when other lineages of humans arose.
More branches?
More branches.
As you were saying earlier, yeah.
Yeah, there was one branch that became very specialized in vegetarianism, and they did a great job for about 1 million years, and they died out because they were outcompeted by other animals. There are 2 lineages like that. And then there's our lineage, which we call Homo, which, of course, is Latin for man. And we're beginning to find some of the transitional fossils that look very Lucy-like in the front of their jaw, but in the back of the jaw, they look very Homo-like.
Okay.
So we're beginning to understand that there is, as Darwin would talk about, descent over time with change.
Sure.
And the studies of climate are suggesting that change was stimulated largely by climatic change, that it was getting drier, new kinds of animals were appearing on the landscape, and there were various forces that brought about significant change.
When you talk about that they're still finding these fossils, my question is, I guess, along the lines of some of the students you talk to who say, "Haven't you found everything already?" Where are these turning up? How are they finding them? Are they just digging deeper in locations they've been, or are they trying new areas? I'm fascinated by the process.
Yeah, the process, unfortunately, even with all the technology we have today, there are no signs that say dig here.
Right.
Or,
it's like mining, right? You do your best.
Yeah. And you walk the landscape, and you just look and you look and you look. You get up at the crack of dawn, and you're in the field as soon as you can after a quick breakfast, and you spend the morning up till about noon, when it's obviously now getting close to 120, 25 degrees,
Sure.
and you want to go for a swim in the river nearby, and you go out with collection teams that survey these areas. And if something significant is found, for instance, when I found Lucy, I found a little piece of elbow. And when I examined it more closely, I thought it might be from a baboon. But as I looked at it more closely, I could see it had the anatomy of a human ancestor. And then as we looked around on the ground, we found pieces of the skull, pieces of vertebra, pieces of ribs, and so forth. So the Afar Triangle is a huge place. There are many places still that need examination. I think the country of Eritrea, most people don't know where Eritrea is or have heard of it, but it's just north of Ethiopia on the Red Sea. And I have surveyed there, but currently there are certain challenges that keep us from working in the country. But I think there are going to be exciting discoveries made there.
Okay. So it's such a large region. There's just so much to look for. You mentioned when you first discovered Lucy. I enjoyed one of the clips. Again, I talk about you living on YouTube. You're everywhere. There was one conversation or one talk you gave where you mentioned you wondered how different your life would be if you would have looked over your right shoulder instead of your left. And because that's how you found Lucy, she was on your left.
Oh, she was on my right.
On your right, I mean.
Yeah.
So I think about that and wonder: do you miss those days in any way? That when you're physically out there, spending in that heat, doing that work, that physical work, is there anything about that you feel any kind of nostalgia for?
Well, I was only 31 in those days, so people know how old I am, if I found her 50 years ago. So, the heat didn't bother me. Being out in the middle of a desert where you didn't have ice, you didn't have air conditioning, you lived in a little tent with temperatures that were well over 100 degrees every day, and very, very determined. And it set up a very strategic way of covering that ground. But there is nothing like being in the field on an expedition. That's to be sure. You're with 15 or 20 people who have the same interest as you. You're together for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You better like one another.
Yeah, I bet.
And you sit down, the conversation is, hey, Chris, you were out in area such and such, looking for that fault that shifted the sediments. What'd you find? Oh, I found this new, very crystal-rich volcanic ash that we should date, and that will allow us to date the fossils that were found, last week. And Don, what do you think about the variation in the fossils that came in today, and so on and so forth? So you're 24 hours a day. You're really doing what you wanted to do that's what I wanted to do as a young kid. I read Thomas Henry Huxley's book, Man's Place in Nature. And this is very much present with me these days to try to understand our place in the natural world. I think it will remind us how incredibly fortunate we are as a species to have this opportunity. And we should do everything to protect the natural world, because regardless of one's personal beliefs, on this planet, nature, Mother Nature was Mother Nature. This is the world that created us. And we're threatening Mother Nature's. But at any rate,
No.
I digress a little bit.
That's okay.
But,
I think we just got a taste of the talk that you're giving tonight at
Yes.
TMCC. For those of you who were listening, now this was a few weeks ago, but yes, this is why you're in town, is to talk about this very subject.
Exactly. And being in the field is a rare opportunity. And after you're out there a while, if someone brings in a New Time magazine when they arrive, you don't even read it. You know, you're kind of totally isolated out
Right.
there. You're in a world that is much, in some ways, like the world that probably some of our ancestors lived in. You know, where water was free, land was free, food was free, space was. I mean, you know, today we're charged for everything.
Right.
We have to pay for everything. But you were living in a world, not necessarily a Rousseauian world. There were a lot of carnivores who were out to have you as an hors d'oeuvre,
Sure.
of course.
Yes.
But in a world in which you had deep connections every day. And I go back to Africa every year. My wife and I will be there in December. And there is a sense that you're in a place that you're in tune with. You're not on Madison Avenue. You know, you're not running through an airport in Reno. You're actually part of that natural environment. And so being in the field is really a high point for so many people. But not every anthropologist, every student. We've had a lot of wonderful students who have gone on in paleoanthropology. Some of them are more lab people.
Okay.
Because discovery is one element, but it's how we interpret, analyze, scan, X-ray, image, put into virtual space, and do statistical analyses, and that really tease out an amazing amount of evidence that you just wouldn't think was there. I've got a colleague who found a baby skull. He's also an Ethiopian, Zerai, great name, Zerai Alam-Seged, and he teaches at the University of Chicago. And it's a little baby that's 3.3 million years old, and it's got the face, and it's got the developing teeth inside, and our enamel is laid down on a daily basis.
Okay.
So when we're born, the body is shocked, and the enamel stops being laid down.
Okay.
And he can find that birth line.
Amazing.
So he knows exactly how many days old that baby was when it died 3.3 million years ago. And from the size of the upper canine developing in there, it's tiny. It was a female baby that died 3.3 million years ago at about three years old.
Incredible. Well, like you say, the people in the field enjoy the discovery, and then the people in the labs tell us what it means, right? They interpret, like as you said. So we learn how it interacts or it fits in with the larger picture because of those details.
Yes, exactly.
Fascinating. So you mentioned you go back to Africa often. I presume that you've been back to the site where you originally discovered Lucy.
Yes, we in January. I had a small group of friends and supporters of our research and brought them to the exact spot where Lucy was found. It was an arduous trip. It was very hot.
Off the beaten path a bit?
Off the beaten path. It was a real trek getting there. But there was, during the visit, a moment that I remember when there was just pure silence. Everybody just had a moment of reverence for where they were, that this was a place where an ancestor who we are pretty familiar with. There have been a number of reconstructions. I was a host and narrator for a 3-part PBS series in the early 90s. And there was a moment when people were obviously reflecting on the fact that here was an important place where this individual lived, died, was fossilized, and discovered after she had lain in suspended animation for 3.2 million years.
There's nothing to say but to be quiet and think about that and honor that, because and then she gave us knowledge as a result.
Yeah, and you know, there are a lot of people who go on safari, and I encourage people to do that. And to the person, they come back and they say, you know, you feel like you're home. You feel like you're, well, it really gets into your blood. And I say, it's not just in your blood, it's in your genes. That's why you feel so familiar.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's a brilliant observation. Yeah, we're all from there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so of course it feels right. We just don't realize it until we're there. Love it. Okay, so I don't want to monopolize your time. I know you have a speech to give tonight. I have one question, just out of curiosity. You have a long, distinguished career. Lucy is, of course, the thing that everybody wants to talk about. But is there any other work that you've done that you wish other people would know about, because they only want to talk about Lucy?
Well, one of the things I'm really proud of was a dream I had to build a research institute that would specifically focus on trying to understand how we became who we are today. And Arizona State University gave me that opportunity. Michael Crow has helped us enormously, the president of the university. We have a number of scholars there. As I said, we're close to 19 scholars doing all kinds of research, from genetic research to just comparative osteology or bones, to trying to understand early human behavior and how they interacted with the environment, and so on. And I think that this is something that's going to live on long after I'm not around. So
Fossilized, perhaps?
Well, I don't think I'm going to get fossilized. I thank Lucy for falling into the lake and getting fossilized.
Fair enough.
But that's certainly something. The other thing that I'm very proud of is I have chosen a path that has emphasized science communication. I remember being on the Today Show many, many years ago, and I got an unsolicited letter from Carl Sagan, one of my heroes. And he just said, caught you on the morning show, and I think you're going to stimulate generations of people, of anthropologists. And we got to meet and talk about that. So I think it's very important for people to have science delivered to them in the vernacular, in a way that they can understand why it's important. And I feel that science communication is vital to people making the right choices in life about doctors and medicines and surgeries and so on, but also to really understand their place in the natural world and understand that we are not beyond the natural world. We're not, as some anthropologists have said, super organic, and culture will solve everything. We see, and we're in the middle of a crucial moment right now on this planet, because climate change is happening so very quickly. And if people understand it, they might think more about making the right choices, so that we will actually leave descendants who will look back and admire their ancestors.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
I would love to have that happen. I'd love someone to admire me in the future.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for giving us the time today. It's been wonderful. And also, thank you for helping improve ASU's reputation. See, I was a student at Arizona State before Michael Crow, before all of this innovation. And as I remember, we were on the top of a lot of lists, but it was mostly the list of party schools. Now you're on top of innovation lists, and that is exciting to see. I'm very proud of that. So I appreciate you contributing mightily to that upgrade.
Well, thank you, Dave. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
I want to say to everybody listening, please watch Artifacts on PBS Reno via broadcast or stream on pbsreno.org or the PBS app or on the PBS Reno YouTube channel. Also, please read art views at pbsreno.org. Now, do you have a question or maybe a comment or a suggestion? If you do, please send them to me at podcasts@pbsreno.org. My thanks to Dr. Donald Johanson, and thank you for listening to PBS Reno Arts. Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org.